but potentially some of the benefit of the franchise network is other owners in the network that have already done what you've done that can help guide you and help save you some time, cost, heartache.
Today I'm speaking with Matt Zalk. Matt is the owner of QRenter Oklahoma City, QRenter Tulsa, QRenter St. Charles, QRenter St. Louis, and QRenter Wichita State. So he owns 5 property management companies in 5 different markets, and he has successfully scaled his business where they're currently managing over 3,000 doors. Matt has a ton of experience in property management. He's been doing this for over a decade and has a lot to share with us today. So I'm going to get right to it and introduce you to Matt.
Key Renter is obviously, it's a franchise business. We started in Tulsa. We own Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Wichita, Northwest Arkansas, and St. Louis. And we started like everybody else, managing a couple of doors. Originally in 2014, 2015, I was buying rental properties in Boulder, Colorado, because I was living in Dubai and my sister was in Boulder and I wanted to invest in real estate. And so we started buying stuff. And when I moved back to the US, when I met my wife and moved back to the US from Dubai, I knew I wanted to buy more real estate and kind of be in the flow of real estate generally. So we started buying properties in Tulsa, which is where my wife's family is from and where we are now. The system of managing with spreadsheets and trying to orchestrate renovations on Class C properties was super challenging, and I knew I needed to have a better system, and so I started exploring property management as an option for kind of greater flow and being in the system. I knew because I had formerly worked at a company called Property Finder in the UAE that I wanted to be in a recurring revenue business, and the prospect of being in property management, knowing that I would be part of the renovations, part of the management, potentially buy properties from existing clients, or at least know of properties when they came up on the market more actively, was attractive to me. And so we started the management business.
Got it. So you mentioned that you now have multiple your franchise partner in multiple locations. Did you
Yeah.
start with one and then expand from there, or?
Yeah, we started with Tulsa, and then in the very early days of COVID, like February, March 2020, we started the operation in Oklahoma City. And at the time, I remember people saying this is chaos. It's all, just nobody has any certainty on the future. Why do you want to open up another office? And my thought was, in an era or a time of great uncertainty, that's when we can provide the most value to our clients. We can study the rules, learn the rules, and then we can execute knowing those rules, the framework of the game or the rules of the game. And then our clients don't have to have all the relationships with aid agencies and the understanding of when you can and can't evict somebody for non-payment of rent, if they have a federally backed mortgage or whatever else. I thought this is a perfect time for us to open an office, because there's going to be uncertainty and there's going to be opacity in the rules of the game, and why not be positioned to help more people during this time.
So what a lot of people see as a risk, you saw as an opportunity.
I think in general, unfortunately, we live in an environment of, regulatory overreach, and that causes uncertainty, chaos. It causes just unknowing in the broader population. If you have one house, why do you want to spend a whole bunch of time talking to attorneys and understanding all of the rules when you can pay to outsource it? I mean, I don't know. I don't mow my own lawn, not because it's complex, but because I don't want to get gas for a lawnmower and sharpen my blades. And, when a rock hits the window, because I'm foolish and don't do this as a profession, now I have to replace the window on my house, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's some things that are just better outsourced to professionals.
Yeah, got it. So you've obviously grown to over 3,000 doors now, but as you mentioned, you started like everybody else, kind of at square one. What did those early times look like? Like, how did you get your first doors under management?
I think generally we've always used the same system, which is Google reviews and Google leads. I participate with BNI. I've been a member for 7 years in Business Network International. I think that's a good way to get referrals from people that you know and people that trust you and like you. But realistically, I want to be there at the pain point that an owner experiences. So when there's an eviction that needs to happen, and they don't know, again, back to talking about attorneys and figuring out the rules, do they know the pay or quit that you need to, is it a 3 day, is it a 5 day? What's the actual language that will stand up to scrutiny by a judge? Does it need to be posted, mailed, both? Who's the attorney that's actually going to go represent the LLC? Because an LLC cannot represent themselves. They cannot be pro se in front of the court. So I think just generally, I wanted to be in that position. Now I lost the train of thought of
Basically,
the
like
question.
educating people through through online on those
Yes,
topics.
exactly. So I wanted to be, that's where we were going. I wanted to be kind of there when people needed us. And so being, online is the best platform. When they do a search for, best property management companies, I want to be there. It's a much harder proposition to say to somebody who manages their own single family residential property and enjoys, I don't know, mowing the yard at that property, or enjoys fixing the garage door when it goes bust, to say to them, hey, let me do this for you. Let me take a percentage of the rent you collect and do this for you. And they say, well, I actually enjoy coming out here on Saturdays and listening to a podcast and mowing the yard of this duplex. Okay. When they face trouble, when they reach a pain point, I want to be there when they Google, best property managers. I don't necessarily need to go out and convince them that this is a valuable service. It's like, I don't need to go and sell them a Camry or a Ferrari. If they are walking right now and they enjoy walking to work, then let them do that. Or biking to work, let them do that. When they need a car, they'll go online and search for a car.
Yeah, got it. So basically, the mindset of finding basically getting your company in front of people that are searching specifically for either property management services directly or solutions to problems that those rental owners are encountering. And
Exactly. And then I mean, working with Upkeep, for example, just doing blog posts, making sure that that the website is good enough that Google will rank us when people do the search. I mean, some of it is paid and some of it is just, organic. If I can be the person that answers the question about the Tulsa Housing Authority or the, St. Charles Housing Authority or whatever it is, then I'm going to rank when somebody does a search for those things. And yeah, I think a good example is, I was doing a little bit of research on exterior lighting for our house, and there are many people that will sell you a full service lighting package at your house. There are other people that will sell you on the idea of how to do it. How do you buy cables? How do you choose up lighting? How do you choose a whole bunch of stuff? And by the way, if you want me to help with just the design, I'll do that. If you want me to do the install, I'll do that. Whatever it is. So just the content creation side that people will engage with, and then know your name is out there. That's really, really important.
got it. So you decided to go the franchise route. What is it that made you choose to go that route versus starting up your own independent property management company?
That's a good question. At the time, my thinking was I just want to get down to brass tacks. I didn't want to worry about logos. I didn't want to worry about a bunch of the stuff that you have to do to get a business off the ground. Forget the LLC and, Secretary of State documents. And I just wanted to go out and sell property management services. And it seemed like the fastest route to do that was the franchise. I think since then, I've learned that first of all, Key Renter is a fantastic franchise system. There are people that will there are systems that will try to extract every dollar from you, that will rake you over the coals, that will do a bunch of stuff that may be viewed as unscrupulous from the franchisee's perspective. And Key Renter is not that. They're incredible humans, morally upright, and they really want us to benefit, and they want to benefit alongside of us, so our interests are fully aligned. But I will say there's a ton of value that you cannot isolate. It's fairly nebulous. So, meeting partners like Upkeep, meeting partners like Jeremy Pound at RentScale, like, would I have met them at industry conferences? Perhaps. Would I have had a warm introduction to them and started working with them? Perhaps, perhaps not. And what do those partners play? What role do they play in our growth or success? Hard to define. So, could we have grown as fast or faster alone? No idea. But potentially some of the benefit of the franchise network is other owners in the network that have already done what you've done, that can help guide you and help save you some time, cost, heartache.
Got you. So you're in four different markets right now, if I'm not mistaken.
We're in five. Yeah.
Five different markets. How do you manage to run five different companies in five different markets? What does that look like setup wise? Like, are you the CEO managing everything from the high level view and you have COO on the ground, or can you walk us through a little bit what that looks like?
So in practice, there's a leadership team, and then the leadership team from the leadership team or on the leadership team, there's a VP of people and assets, and that person works directly with the senior property manager in each market, and that senior property manager oversees the property managers, the maintenance team, vendors, etc. And then on our leadership team, there's the VP of sales and marketing, and that person oversees the business development managers in each market. So, I mean, I don't think of myself as, CEO. I think of myself as like chief problem fixer and doing that from a strategic level, but also doing it from a very tactical level. So yeah, I'm involved in implementing new softwares and trying to solve problems at a high level, but I also view myself as the quality assurance person. I'm in the system every single day. I'm checking on rents and I'm looking at why things look strange. If there's a rent amount that's collected for 346 and 47 cents on the 18th of the month, I'm definitely going to click on that and say, what in the heck is going on? Why is that not a straight 1875 number, right? 1,800 bucks of rent plus $75 a late fee. Something's weird. So I'm like always checking a lot. I get a lot of emails and I'm kind of problem solving and triaging and delegating. But a huge portion of what I do is quality assurance, like
So
prodding and poking, looking at contracts, looking at, at the detailed level of the business. And my team will yell at me and say, stay high level, stay high level. And I'm like, oh, I can get high level and I will be that. But I also want to make sure like I'm poking and prodding and ensuring that things are getting done the right way.
So you're actually going out there and trying to find problems. I'm sure some of them get brought to you, but you're actually in the day to day, like your job is almost, I'm going to go and try to find problems right now
Correct.
that we can be proactive before a client ever brings this to light.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. And I do it with maintenance. I do it with billing. I do it with maintenance. I do it with like receivables. So people that are paying rent. I do it with payables, with invoices that we get from vendors. I want to make sure that people aren't gouging us. On pricing, I look at a capacitor that's billed at 250, and then I'll dig deeper and say, what would another vendor charge us for a capacitor replacement? It's 125, and then I'll go to the property manager or I'll go to the senior property manager, whoever, and say, why is this bill like this? And they might say, that's ridiculous, and I'm going to call the vendor. And they may say, well, what says on the invoice is capacitor, but if you look at the feedback, via these emails or text message threads, this was a capacitor plus we did a condenser clean plus we did, two other things. They just didn't put it on the invoice. And I say, well, let's get it on the invoice that the owner knows this was not a $250 capacitor change.
Yeah, got it. As you're expanding, like how do you choose the market to expand to? Is there any type of process there?
Some of it's opportunistic, like, so and so wants to sell a business, or we find the opportunity to buy a business. And that's the easiest way to expand now that I'm not, I don't have the time and capacity to go live in the market, scale the vendor network, find new clients, etc. I can't be at BNI in all these different markets. And some of it is, proximity. What's the next large close market that we can tackle, and what does competition look like in those markets? So, if you ask me what our next market is, I may say Dallas, but competition is huge. The barrier to entry of being a real estate agent in Texas is much more significant than it is in other markets. So we need to start planning who's going to be the realtor, who's going to be the broker in that market. I may say, Springfield, Missouri. It's small, but competition's not that great. I may say Kansas City. There's a whole bunch of things, but proximity, what we can get to in a day. I also look at things like crime. I mean, I don't want the business, which in a certain respect operates as an island, and in a certain respect, is very much part of a team. I don't want them dealing with crime in Little Rock at 3 a.m. where I can't get to that property and see to it myself. That a female property manager is not directly in danger. I don't want them dealing with that. Pardon me. I don't want them dealing with that. I don't want them, being put in weird precarious situations that I'm not willing to put myself in. So, we've not expanded to Little Rock. I just, maybe Conway, which is a suburb, is a good opportunity, but I don't know how big that market is vis-a-vis the broader MSA. And, I just don't want my team dealing with kind of high crime areas.
Makes sense. I guess as you've obviously scaled quite a bit, so been around for roughly a decade, scaled to over 3,000 doors, quite impressive. What would you say the pivotal points were in your business when you hit either like a certain door count or a certain revenue mark where you were like, okay, the way that we've been running things at this point isn't working and we need to switch things up? Like, do Can you remember any of those along the
I
way?
don't remember if there was like a door count. I think certainly there's ebbs and flows in property management. You add doors and you need to add staff, and so your profitability drops, and then you need to add staff, and you determine that you need to add staff at some point in advance of growth because you want to be able to serve clients without a dilution in that level of service. And there's also an inflection point, I guess, in the realization that people are going to go out of the office. At some level, you become a real business and you start offering, paid time off for parental leave, and you need to be able to cover those doors. And if you only have two property managers and one goes out, then you all of a sudden have a problem. If you have three property managers and one goes out, and depending on the workload, you still have a problem. So you need to build a big enough team in maintenance, in property management, in accounting, and other things so that people can leave, whether it's on a 2 day, 3 day PTO vacation that borders a holiday, or goes out for a month of paternity leave or maternity leave. Like, you need to have those systems. So I remember there was a point where we just didn't have those redundancies, and we looked at each other as a leadership team, and we are like, we need to build capacity in the team so that people can go on holiday for a few days or a month and not and things don't fall apart with the management of the properties that person was formerly managing. So formally or formerly, I don't know what I said, but I meant formerly. And so that's a big part of it. That part of it, though, requires that you have the margin in the business and have a scale to be able to afford that. So yeah, I mean, the bigger you are, the better in many different respects. One is you just have a more robust team, and two is when you have tenants looking at a property, 123 Main Street, and that unit gets leased, you can now take them and put them into 234 Main Street next door. So you want density, similar to many other businesses. You want density in property management, because not only can your maintenance people go from door to door to door fixing problems, or at least block to block to block, but you also have the ability to move people around, both team members and prospective tenants that you're working with.
Makes sense. I guess in terms of the owners you work with, do you have a particular type of owner that you look to target? Are you kind of open to all different types? Do you prefer owners that have one or two properties, or owners that own 50 plus? Like what do you look for
I
there?
mean, I like to have a mix. I think the problem with a 50 plus owner is if you get fired and they decide to take everything in house, you now have significant excess capacity in the team, and you have to figure out what to do with that.
Yeah, it's like the Costco risk, right? Your business is
Exactly.
flourishing because you're working with Costco. They decide to cut you all of a sudden. You lost 90% of your business and you're out of business the next day.
That's right. That's right. So that is problematic, but you can offer those people tremendous benefit. I mean, we do stuff like paying mortgages and paying insurance bills, and you can do a bunch of stuff for those people because they've got a more robust stream of cash flow than you can do for a smaller owner. But a smaller owner, then again, you can add much more benefit to that individual. We get messages all the time that say, "Please don't raise my rates, but I'd be happy to pay more than 10%. You guys do a great job," and it's because what you give that person back in time is so much more significant than what you give the person that has 50 doors in time. You're giving more in aggregate to the person that has 50 doors back, but they could start to build their own systems. They could pay for some of the softwares. They can do some of the stuff. Realistically, it doesn't make sense most likely when you look at the full tech stack. But that person that has one house takes them a lot of time and effort to go out and take photos, to put them on Zillow. Forget that even for a second. To clean the house, to do make ready. They don't know vendors. They don't have scale pricing. They don't have a bunch of stuff that we have. And so for our ability to get it cleaned, take photos, put it on Zillow, show the property, all that stuff takes a significant amount of time. And with systems we can arbitrage that time for a single asset owner in a way that is different than we can arbitrage it at 50 units, where somebody has the ability to hire somebody in-house and actually do all that stuff. And will they do it as good? Will they use as good as systems? Will they? I don't know. Probably not. And then they have to hire somebody and make sure that that person's not stealing money. We've heard all sorts of horror stories from people that do that, where so and so at 123 Main Street hasn't paid rent in 2 months. Well, it turns out they were paying rent. They were just paying it to the property manager that so and so had that so and so owner had hired directly, and that person's now absconded with the money, and they're left holding the bag. So there's pros and cons to both, but I prefer to have a healthy mix, and we love an owner that has one or two properties. And if you can take them from one or two properties to 5 properties or 10 properties, because they see how easy it is to invest their free cash flow from their whatever W-2 job or their primary business into real estate, and they see the cash coming back and they understand the depreciation benefit, that's a wonderful success story.
Yeah. Are you seeing that a lot where someone will start with you with one or two properties and then you'll help them continue to grow their portfolio?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. We
That's
see a lot of we see a lot of hey, I just inherited, money. I'd like to start with one and see if we can grow from here. We see a lot of out of state investors that just kind of continue to pour free cash flow with the expectation that in, 10 years they're going to retire and they want to have $20,000 in monthly free cash flow. We see a ton of people that go from a single door to multiple doors over the course of years.
I think that's a great indicator also just how you guys are doing as a business, right? You know if someone's coming to you, you're managing one or two doors for them, and 5 years later they're at 10 doors and you're managing them all. They're happy with your service and you're providing real value to them.
That's absolutely true. The hard part is when to identify that because we'll have a single person come to us with you know a bad looking $700 a month door, and we're like, man, for $70 a month, do we really want to do this business? It's hard to rent this door. They don't really want to put the money into renovating it, whatever it is. We say we really don't want it, but we don't know when that person, and we've had tons of clients. We have, I don't know, 13, 1,400 clients. We have had tons of clients in the history of our business where they've started with one crappy door and then they themselves realize it's not worth it and start buying really nice stuff, new builds or, later vintage product that are easier to rent and better for us to manage. And it all started because we had a good relationship based on that crappy first door. So, or crappy first three or four doors. So it's hard to know. We generally like take anything and we'll manage anything and we'll caveat it by saying it's much harder to rent a $700 property, where you don't want to fix the basics, and you want me to rent it to a good tenant, a good on time paying, high credit score tenant. But, sometimes it works out for the better that they start with that and then realize that it's worth it just to go down to a different neighborhood and buy better houses.
Got it. So I guess the key there is just being super transparent with them from the start.
And it's hard because you say something to somebody and you may even have the call recorded. And then 6 months down the line, they say, you never told me that. It's like, do I want to pull the recording and show you? I mean, nobody wins if I have to pull the call and share with you where I told you exactly what you're telling me I didn't share with you. And so we kind of take it on the chin and, say, okay, I'm sorry we didn't tell you. And, a BDM who's now put in a weird circumstance where their boss is saying, why did you not tell them about this? Why did you not caveat this or whatever? They pull the call and say, here's minute 14 of our call. This is where I told you. Are we going to go back and,
Yeah.
share that or not? No,
It
the
creates a
answer
bit of
is
a
we
tense
need to tell them
situation
more.
also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So we just have to tell them verbally once or twice and writing once or twice and kind of continue pushing that messaging, which again becomes difficult in its own right because I think a lot of our property owners, when we think about things like a monthly newsletter or marketing efforts or whatever, a lot of our owners hire us because they don't want to deal with it. And every time they do deal with something of the property, a little bit of their heart sinks into their stomach and they go, what am I on the hook for now? Do I have to replace the HVAC system? Do I have to replace a roof? Like what are they texting me about? So sometimes I feel like the less we communicate, the less we, touch base with an owner, the happier they are. They just know that their rent is coming in and they don't want to hear anything else. And they're
Yeah.
tons of owners that want to hear from us monthly. Hey, what's going on? How are you? They just want to chat. They're a little bit older and they have less going on and they want to chat about their properties. They want to do, personal walkthroughs of property. So there's no one size fits all solution. And so it's, and, going back to what I said, there's not a perfect communication strategy. Some people will hear it the first time and some people will hear it the seventh, but there's no easy solution
So,
there.
so how do you handle owner communication? Because you were saying like some people don't really ever want to hear from you, and when they do hear from you, their heart almost skips a beat. And then there's others that like to be updated. Do you ask them when they're signing up what their communication preferences? Do you have a standard that you do for all clients? What does that look like?
My general philosophy is, and what we've cascaded down to the team is if you go back and forth by email a couple of times, pick up the phone and have a conversation. But we will send owners, we over communicate with owners. And what we say to them on each communication is like, if you do nothing, we'll proceed as usual. So a good example is on leasing or unit turns. We'll send you a message when their tenant sends us a notification that they're moving out. We will communicate with you when the house is being turned. We're going to, of course, ask you about approving bids and stuff when it is turned. We're going to tell you when it's on the market. We're going to send you a Zillow link when it's on the market. We're going to tell you when the lease is signed. And I think the way I communicated it and the way I hear Yoni, who's the head of sales and marketing, cascade it down to his BDM team is Tell owners we're going to over communicate. If you want to not hear from us, filter your messages in Gmail because or whatever mail service because you don't have to answer. If I ask you about whether you want to renew this tenant at a given price, if you say nothing in 14 days, I'm sending them the proposal to renew the lease. If you tell me I want $50 more, $50 less, we'll have a conversation about it and let's talk about the market and share the comps and do everything else. If you do nothing, I'm gonna renew it at a 3, 4, 5, 6% increase, and we're gonna move on with what we think is the best given the comps in the area. Similar thing with maintenance. Every time we have a maintenance order that comes in and it gets deployed to a vendor, you're going to get an email as an owner with the PDF of the work order, and it says exactly what's going on. And you don't have to do anything. You just have to know. And if you want to run interference, you can. Hey, the fourth burner on that stove never worked. I don't want it to work. I don't want to pay for it to be repaired. Great. We can stop that. You have to know the implications. If a tenant's in a property where the fourth burner doesn't work, they might not be as open to accepting a rent increase and staying in the property. That may be a general indication to them of how you want us to take care of the property. But if you want to, if you want to let it be, we're just going to send a vendor out. We're going to fix it. We're going to get it done right, and then on to the next issue. But we don't want an owner to be surprised that work was done without their knowing about it. So we send every single work order for an occupied property when it gets deployed to a vendor to the owner of the property. If they want to just filter them out and ignore them, and they'll get $200 less at the end of the month, then so be it.
Got it. Okay. You touched on BDM slightly. I just have a further question on that. So just for anyone who's watching, BDM stands for Business Development Manager. It's basically your salesperson.
Yeah.
You obviously are in multiple markets. You have multiple BDMs. So you probably have enough experience to answer this one, where I think it'd be relevant for anyone listening to take note. Is there a specific sales process that your BDMs follow? Like, is it, okay, a lead calls in, they handle it and they give them the pricing right away? Or what does that look like?
It's so varied in what owners want to talk about when they're prospective owners. They may be dealing with an eviction that they don't know how to handle, and they want to just get the eviction done, and then they'll move on with management services. But right now, they really don't care about pricing. They just want to understand the eviction process. They may want to know pricing as the most important thing. We're not going to shy away from any conversation. We'll tell them pricing. If the only thing they want to discuss is pricing, we're going to tell them pricing. We're not going to tell them, hey, we'll discuss that, but first I'm going to address the following 5 benefits of using a property manager. But it's so varied, and the conversations can get very deep. I mean, people want to understand, cash on cash return of a potential investment that they're making. They want to understand whether we handle maintenance, whether they have any input, whether they can show the property themselves, but still have us manage it. They want to know a ton of different things. So we have a process. I think generally the conversation opens with, how can I help you, and what are you looking to achieve? It does not start with here's the 5 things I want to accomplish as the salesperson on this call. So
finding their pain points before you ever start.
100%, because there's always a pain point if they're calling us. I'm out of state and I can't be there to manage it, or again, the eviction process, or I've just been, there's been so much maintenance at this property and I'm not able to get good pricing and I can't handle it because I have a normal job and I can't, be there to write the check to the vendor every time they need to come out to fix something.
Yeah. So is it usually done on the first call? Like it's a 1-call process. They'll call in,
look,
have a conversation.
So many people send in their information and then don't want to have a phone call. They want to vet you by text first. So, no, a lot of it happens by text. They just want rental comps. They just want to know what the property is going to lease for. We'll send them whatever they want, however they want. If they want to jump on a phone call, we're available. If they want to do everything by email, we'll do it by email. I think a lot of people have there's still a stigma associated with property management, and I don't know why, but maybe they've been told things verbally that then turned out to not be true in writing or whatever. So a lot of people still want email trails of everything. Maybe they just feel like, I'm not going to remember this stuff, so I want you to tell me by email. We'll give it all to them by email. This is how we do this. This is how we do that. And this is, how we pay bills and how we are going to pay you your owner distribution. But, it is so varied in how people want the information, and it varies by geography, the speed at which people move. In Oklahoma City and Tulsa, for example, people move faster than in Wichita and St. Louis. That's potentially because there are more investors here in Tulsa and in Oklahoma City, and fewer investors, more accidental landlords that are kind of moving out of their own home and gathering information 3 months in advance of their move.
Yeah.
In Wichita, maybe that they're military families and they know that they're being deployed, but they've got time before doing it. So it's super dependent on the market, and people have different lead times, different speeds, different pain points, and different styles and desires for communication.
Okay. So you basically tailor it to whatever best fits the profile of the person that's reaching out. Basically, how
Our
they
process, our
communicate.
process,
Yeah.
yeah, our process in sales is very human, and we want to be speedy and answer the questions that people want or people have. So we don't have a pre-scripted, I'm going to tell you all these things, and you're going to just sit there on the phone and wait for us to answer the questions that you don't have.
Got it. Got it. So you've obviously managed a lot of properties. What would you say the craziest story you have from your time in property management is?
Oh my God. I mean, there are dead bodies. There are, things that you find at properties that you never expected. I mean, there are some. We absorbed a 64 unit portfolio back in the summer of 2021, and I walked up to the house. I did all the, service of the change of management, and I walked up, and this lady that was supposed to be living at the house turned out to not be that person. She was homeless and squatting in the house. And it took the cops coming out to get her off the front porch. And when we finally went into the house, there had been squatters living in this house for months, I guess. And there were all sorts of crazy things. I didn't do the clean out myself, but we have a clean out crew they're incredibly hardy, and they've seen a lot. And it was the only time I've ever heard these guys say that they puked at the house. I mean, using a closet as a bathroom for weeks or months on end, dead animals wrapped up in carpets in the backyard, like just all sorts of horrific stuff. And I wouldn't say that's not something that catalyzed any change in our system, but very, very early on in our property management career, we did a little bit of painting and make ready on a house. We leased the house, and when the tenants moved in, they were like, "Why in the hell is there a car in the garage?" And we didn't ever think, I guess, that probably prompted us to start doing professional move in inspections and move out make ready inspections, because we were like, oh, we never even opened the garage door. We just figured it would be empty. And now we call it the Lexus in the garage moment. So, we've got to do full inspections. And then the property, this was back in I don't know, this was 2017, 2018 probably. And then we had, guys getting keys to a Lexus, moving the Lexus to a storage unit, and moving everything else in the garage to a storage unit. And I'm like, why are we doing this? And we don't bill for this sort of thing. It takes time and effort, and there's liability in moving a car. And it was crazy. So there have been a lot of inflection points associated with crazy stories, or also just those things that you see in property management. One of them is homelessness and squatting and kind of the disgusting associated behaviors.
Yeah.
If we sat long enough, I'd probably think of a lot of different crazy stories. But at this point, I've been out of the direct.
That's
I only manage 10 properties, and I don't see as crazy things as I used to see.
dead bodies and a toilet closet is pretty high up there. So
I mean, dead body. We've seen enough dead bodies for sure, and calling the coroner's office and the police and getting into units, and how long has this person been dead, and thank God we did a wellness check or whatever, because there's if a well-paying tenant stops paying rent by the first week, by the day 7, 8, we are getting really worried, and probably even do a wellness check before that.
crazy. All right, so switching sides here.
From away from dead bodies.
Away from dead bodies, we'll go
All
away
right.
from bathroom and
Okay.
everything related to that. So obviously with property management, there's a fair amount of cash flow that's generated. Right
Yeah.
now, what are you doing with that cash flow? Are you investing it in other real estate and other assets, back into the business, or just necessary for living life? Like, what does that look like?
So we generally focus principally on buying other businesses, trying to buy the assets of other businesses. So that takes up a good amount of cash. I also invest in
Like,
a
what
ton
type of
of
businesses?
other property management companies. So
Okay,
we buy the property management contracts from other property management companies, and we've done 5 acquisitions in the last I don't know, 8 or 9 months. We buy real estate. So outside of Keyrender and other companies, we directly buy real estate. I do that with friends and partners. I do it by myself, kind of whatever, however I can come across properties to buy, I do when it makes sense. I'm an LP in, I don't know, 30 or 40 deals, a lot of self-storage that I do through uh, things like my SEP IRA, which is not subject to the depreciation benefits because it doesn't see taxation anyways. So there's no point in doing things that are, heavily depreciable in there. And self-storage doesn't see a lot of depreciation because it's mostly core and shell assets. I'm an LP in a bunch of ground up developments, in some venture stuff. Yeah, I try to disperse the cash far and wide, mostly in real estate and real estate associated things. Like, I'm an LP in a deal that does hard money lending. So that's still real estate lending. It's still real estate adjacent. There's very few things. I have like a little bit of money maybe tied up in venture, pure venture, which is not at all associated with real estate, but mostly everything's real estate related.
Got it. So, I mean, it sounds like you're definitely in a lot of different facets of real estate. And from
Yeah.
everything you're saying, right, you're an LP in a lot of different partnerships.
Yeah.
So it's impressive. So if you could go back in time to when you started this, what is the one thing that you would do to help yourself succeed at a quicker pace? Whatever
Oh my God.
that is.
I'd buy more real estate for sure. I mean, of course, everyone says they'd buy more real estate. Well, if you had more free cash flow, you'd, buy more real estate now and yesterday and 10 years ago. But there was a point, prior to 2020, prior to COVID, you could just buy these things. And I remember looking at deals and, it's two houses for $75,000. I don't know, the HVAC is old and it's going to cost me $2,700 to replace the condensing unit or whatever. The roof's a little bit old, and do I want to pay it? And now, they're each worth what was formerly $37,500 is now worth 80 grand, and they've been rented at $900 every month since they're acquired.
Especially in the Midwest, right? That where you're.
Totally. Totally. So I think, had I been able to buy more real estate, I'd be in a better situation, but that's everybody always. I think growth, a lot of people shy away from growth because they're afraid of losing control. They're afraid of cascading down the culture of what they've built through other people and into other people. It's hard, and it can be upsetting when things happen in the business that they're not handled the way you would have handled them, or you lose owners, or you make a mistake. I think, you've got to deal with that and own up to mistakes and pay for them when they come. We get sued a lot for stupid reasons. But I would say to a younger me, grow faster, because with scale, there are many problems that solve themselves. You just have more bandwidth to manage strategy, and you have more people that you can rely on to do some of the work that you were formerly doing. I mean, when we started this, we hired early. So I think our first hire we started in November of 17. Our first hire was the summer of 18. And I hired this guy named Michael, who was great, right out of Syracuse University. And then I hired Robert, who's our COO, that's still with us. And we hired maintenance folks, and I hired a BDM only in 2019, in the summer of 2019, when my first kids were born, and my wife was like, "You can't answer sales calls at midnight. That's like not an acceptable way to exist in life." But hiring earlier, you trade money for time. Obviously, I'd like more of my time back, and I would like people to do the things in the business that I don't love doing. I don't love reconciling our books. I don't love answering phone calls on the weekend now. I mean, there was a point, I still remind my wife of this, that there were points when we were on, holiday, the two of us, and, we're running around New Orleans, and all day I'm on the phone with owners and vendors who are doing work and tenants who are complaining. And like, to buy back some of your own time is a super valuable opportunity. So I think growth allows you to do that. It gives you some of the free cash flow to do that, and you then spend it on hiring competent, capable people. And then I think get away from the notion of hiring inexperienced, inexpensive colleagues. You want people that are super high functioning in this business. I'm sure I don't know what business you can hire, dummies,
In
but
most businesses, the better your team, the better the business will be.
100%. So pay top of market, pay a ton of money, and then you can relax knowing that things are handled by very capable people and that they're solid, logical thinkers, that they care. They're not worried about whether they can afford the medicine that their kids need or whatever it is. Give people PTO, give them flexibility. Like our team is super responsive, but I don't care whether they're responding from their home office or from the office here. It's totally or from the beach in Mexico. Like I don't care. I'm not micromanaging them and their location. And some of our highest functioning people are in the office when they need to be and at home when they need to be. Like if you have kids, be at home with your kids. And if you need to, carve out time to work, carve out time to work. But I'm not going to say that that's 3 p.m. on a Tuesday versus, midnight realistically.
Yeah.
Now our owners and tenants have expectations, but so much is done by email these days. If your phone rings and you need to answer it, do it, even with a child crying in the background. I've done it. I have 4 kids. I've done it 100 times. People understand it's not ideal. They need an answer right now, and you need to get a vendor into a house with a lockbox that they can't access. Get them in right now, and then do what you can do at 10 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whenever your kids go to bed, or on Saturday. You don't want to work Tuesday, work Saturday. I don't care, but pay
Yeah.
people, trust them, and give them the responsibility and the autonomy that they need to get their job done.
Because you hire good people and don't micromanage them and don't get caught up in where they're doing the
I,
work
I
from, as long as they're doing a good job.
Yeah, and I think metrics, like, do the metrics indicate that they're successful, or do the metrics indicate that they're prone to losing owners and having pissed off
Yeah,
clients?
makes sense. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time. Really appreciate it. For anyone that would like to reach out to you, is there a best place for them to connect with you?
No, I mean email Matt at keyrenderpmc.com. One T in my name. That's it. You want to reach out? I'm happy to chat with you there. Um, I mean, I don't follow up. I had a meeting this morning with somebody who reached out to me on LinkedIn. It was like 2 months before I followed up. I'm not on social media and I don't do that other stuff. So
Email.
send me an email.
Cool. Thank you so much, Matt.
Stephen, thank you. Appreciate it.